Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. Today is 3:19 a.m. December 28th, 2024, just one day after my birthday. Wow, and I'm sitting here talking to you guys. But in any case, I just want to make this video first and foremost for the people that actually became members of my channel. I really appreciate the support, so that's why I want to just make a bit more of a side video for you guys. And maybe this will be released in a month or two, who knows, to the general subscription base. But in any case, I wanted to reflect on my recent Kintor interview that I did with the representatives of Kintor, Grace Wang and Wilson Liu. Phenomenal people, phenomenal scientists. It was a really, really good interview. Very interesting, and it looks like it was well received by people. I just want to give my opinions on the side when it comes to KX826, Pyrilutamide, and GT20029. So this is the PDF file they gave to me. And yeah, we're just going to go through it in an ad hoc manner. And hopefully it is somewhat conversational, somewhat understandable what I'm going to be saying. So over here, as you can see on the screen, and if you're not looking at the screen, I'll just describe it to you. We have the mechanism of action of KX826, also known as Pyrilutamide, for treating androgenetic alopecia. So it says over here, the AR expression, or the androgen receptor expression, and 5-alpha reductase expression / activity are higher on balding areas than hair-bearing areas of the scalp. DHT is a potent agonist for the AR signal pathway. So agonist means it stimulates the receptor. It makes it more active. And it says it has 5 times the agonist effect with the androgen receptor compared to that of testosterone. The activation of AR signaling, or androgen receptor signaling, causes hair follicle miniaturization, which eventually leads to androgenetic alopecia, also known as AGA. Now, it should be noted that this is only for people that have the genetics for AGA, whatever those genes are. There are so many genes that are implicated in the potential of somebody developing AGA, right? It could be the case that these genes are plentiful in the population, but some of those genes allows for androgenetic alopecia to be more expressive in terms of trait, but also in terms of severity and age of onset. And then there's a debate about the environmental factors that could influence the progression and the onset of androgenetic alopecia. But in general, what we see here is that the mechanism of action of KX826 Pyrilutamide is to be placed, on the scalp skin, and somehow it has to reach the dermal papilla, and it has to reach the androgen receptors in those dermal papilla cells, and it has to block those androgen receptors such that DHT cannot bind to them anymore. And in theory, if DHT cannot bind to those androgen receptors, then it inhibits the signal. It blocks the signal of DHT or other androgens, stimulating that pathway, right? So if DHT can't send that message to the hair follicle to, hey, I'm an androgen, so start falling out, start shedding, then you're essentially protecting the hair there. But yeah, this is a really cool graphic, and that's the general idea when it comes to topical anti-androgens. Now, there are inhibitors, and then there are agonists, or there are antagonists. So the antagonist blocks the pathway, and the agonist increases the activity of the pathway, right? It's like an engine, what an agonist is. And KX826 Pyrilutamide is an inhibitor, or an antagonist of the androgen receptor. So it blocks the DHT from getting to the hair follicle and ultimately messaging, to the follicle to destroy itself over time, or miniaturize over time. Now, it looks like, just to go to another PowerPoint or slide over here. So in this particular PDF file, this was posted, I think, December 2023 to Kintor's official website. And it talks about 2 things in this article. First, it's the 1% KX826 clinical trial that they're going to be carrying out, just to see if there's any more efficacy data that they can see in their studies. But also what I really want to focus on is the 0.5 follow-up clinical trial. So over here, and I talked about this before on earlier videos, But essentially, they conducted another clinical trial. I don't think this particular trial has a placebo. If I'm not mistaken, it doesn't seem like they mention there being a placebo. It says that this long-term safety clinical trial is a multi-center open label, so okay, it's open label, designed to evaluate the long-term safety of topical use of KX826 for the treatment of androgenetic alopecia patients in China, with a treatment period of 52 weeks. So this is about a long-term study with the primary focus here being on safety, not necessarily efficacy. Efficacy was the secondary focus, but this is primary focus on safety. And essentially they found that it was safe, right? At a 0.5% concentration used daily, there were no real complaints, right? No real sexual complaints in terms of libido. So that was good in terms of the safety when it comes to the product. So it says over here regarding safety, KX826 tincture, the topical, demonstrated great safety and tolerability as a whole without any serious adverse events related to the drug reported. The common incidence, right, of it being about less than or equal to 5%. Treatment-related adverse events were itching at application sites, so yeah, people had a bit of contact dermatitis, and most of them were mild, not affecting daily life of patients, the daily life of patients. So in terms of the efficacy, after 12, 24, 36, and 52 weeks, the treatment for both the total area hair count and the target area non-vellus hair width. So this is a new metric, the target area non-vellus hair width. So that name should be, the title of that should be self-explanatory, but it showed an increase from baseline, among which the target area hair count increased by 9.5%. By the way, this is respectively to the weeks. So for week 12, it increased by 9.5%. Week 24 went to 13%. Week 36 went to 11.4%. But then by week 52, it seems like the efficacy dropped down to 9.7%. Interestingly enough, the same sort of pattern is mirrored when it comes to the what's it called? The target area non-vellus hair width. So we had the same thing. For week 12, we had 12.1% for that metric. Week 24, we had 18.6% for that metric. Week 36, we had 15.7% for that metric. And week 52, we had about 10% for that metric. So in general, you're seeing like throughout the year an increase in hair, total area hair count or target area hair count, whatever you want to call it. And then you see a decline in target area hair count. Then you see an increase in the target area non-vellus hair width. Then you see a decrease in the target area non-vellus hair width. And the question here is, what is causing that decrease? Now, there could be multiple factors. It could be the case that it's a seasonal kind of variation. That could be true. It could also be the fact that maybe there's something to do with topical anti-androgens. Maybe in the long term, they're just not that effective on their own. Or maybe they have some sort of unique sort of shedding pattern cycle that we see with finasteride, right? Finasteride, we have synchronized shedding patterns where, depending on your anagen phase when you first start out the drug, you're going to see some sort of shedding pattern that could occur, right? And the shedding pattern rapidly occurs when your hair is trying to recover and elongate the anagen phase through each cycle. So initially, you have some sort of semi-synchronized growth effect when you take finasteride or dutasteride, but over time, as you shed and as the hair cycles kind of become longer per follicle, hopefully that's the case, right? If you don't have any other hair disorders, then it generally becomes the case that you shed less and you grow better hair, and it becomes more, more strengthened over time. Maybe maybe there's some sort of unique thing going on there with topical anti-androgens, because Cassiopeia, or also known as Cosmo Pharmacy, with their CB0301 Breezula, steroidal topical anti-androgen, whereas KX826 Pyrilutamide by Kintor is a non-steroidal topical anti-androgen. But what we saw with the Breezula clinical trials is pretty much the same story, right? But I think in the Breezula clinical trials, it actually went below baseline in various studies that they did when they did it for about a full year, I think, for one of their phase 3s or phase 2s. But when it comes to Kintor with KX826, it didn't seem to go below baseline, right? It kind of went low, but it didn't go below baseline. A question that I had about this particular study is, there's no placebo, right? So the fact that there's no placebo possibly impacts the significance when it comes to the hair growth or hair improvement metrics. But looking at the literature, it seems like it's generally falling in line with other topical anti-androgens. Now, my opinion on this, if I had to say, I definitely think KX826 is way better than RU58841, simply on the fact because we actually have human safety data. We have human data, right, that is released to the public, whereas Prostrakin or Kyowa Hakokirin, the pharmaceutical company that last had the patent rights for PSK 3841, also known as RU58841, they never released any of that data. So, to me, if anyone is to use any sort of topical anti-androgen that has a, inhibitory effect that's pretty potent or comparable to DHT, obviously it would be, and when I say not an inhibitory effect comparable to DHT, but in terms of an affinity to the androgen receptor comparable to DHT, I would say that would be KX826 Pyrilutamide. That's definitely the winner right now on the market. It's on the market as a cosmeceutical, so I would say don't really expect too much from it in terms of major improvements. It could, in some people, be beneficial, but, we have to see about that, right? They're still looking at some more efficacy data. They're still doing clinical trials at Kintor, especially with their 1% concentration. I personally thought that the initial 0.5% concentration was a bit too low. In one of their clinical trials, I think it was from December of 2022, if I recall correctly, or maybe a little bit after that. This was their first phase 3 clinical trial regarding the efficacy of KX826 Pyrilutamide at 0.5% concentration. And it essentially found that, look, like this thing did not beat placebo. So we don't know what's going on, right? One thing that the Kintor representatives told me was that part of their phase 3 trial, the initial phase 3 trial that they did, where they didn't get statistically significant results between the placebo arm and the treatment arm being 0.5% KX826, for that one group, was that during that time, or at least part of the subjects in that study, they were dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic, right? And in China, where they did the clinical trial, it was kind of hard to coordinate that because there was a huge issue with patient compliance, right? It's a stressful time. People, are under lockdown by force, mind you. They can't go to the clinics and their investigator sites to, get their hair checked because there's a global pandemic going on and people need to be closed down and locked down. And not only that, but when it comes to public health and triage as it is, you have to prioritize people who are more vulnerable, right? The sick. So all these medical facilities that would otherwise be used for the clinical trial investigation could not be used for the clinical trial investigation, such that now you have to allocate those spaces to patients who are sick with other diseases and other issues that are way more serious than androgenetic alopecia. So I think Kintor made a good case with that, right? That's the reality they faced. I checked it myself. It seems like the timelines match up, especially with the laws that came out regarding the lockdown. So For that, I would kind of tell people to, relax a bit. Don't take too much of an antagonistic kind of position towards this particular topical treatment. And yeah, I don't think Kintor is a Bioneer Cosmo RNA by any means. They're actually doing the work and putting their stuff through clinical trials, having their stuff be scrutinized. And they did an AMA and asked me anything, and an interview with me. Not because I'm important or anything, but they're trying to be more transparent here. And that's, really all we can ask for when it comes to some of these pharmaceutical companies, right? We're all stakeholders here. But anyway, that was a long ramble. Now we're looking at the mechanisms of action of GT229. So it says over here, GT229 can recruit E3 ubiquitin ligase to androgen receptor protein for degradation. It captures the androgen receptor and induces its degradation. Sorry, I had a little bit of a concussion, so my vision's blurry. Through ubiquitin-mediated proteolysis. So basically, what does this mean? Right? Using your body's internal trash system, this PROTAC, this proteolysis targeting chimera, I think that's what it is. It comes in, it tags the androgen receptor for deletion. It essentially says, hey, I'm tagging a protein here, and that protein is going to signal to your body's trash system. This protein, by the way, is called ubiquitin. And then the proteasomes, the garbage collector of your body, of your cellular environment, it comes in, it sees the ubiquitin tag to the androgen receptor. The androgen receptor is a protein. And then ultimately it destroys that protein, it degrades it, and then you get these peptide fragments. And essentially for that hair follicle, it no longer has an androgen receptor, and presumably DHT won't be able to bind to it. Now, they told me in their clinical trials so far that they only do a dose application of GT229 solution 1% twice weekly, right? Because the mechanism of action that they've observed is that, at least in some animal studies, it seems as if the androgen receptor is deleted for about maybe 7 to 10 days, and then it regenerates itself, right? So that's pretty cool. So that could be a really good thing when it comes to patient compliance. Anyway, these are some of the photos when it comes to the KX826 clinical trial at 0.5% concentration that we were talking about before. The one where we looked at the 12-week mark, 24-week mark, 36 weeks mark, 52-week mark. So this is the 52-week phase 3-2 or 3B study. Over here, the lighting isn't that good. It could be improvement, right? What I like, though, is this photo over here. It looks pretty fair to me. The density does look very much increased in the mid-scalp. Even in that frontal forelock region, it has increased some sort of density. The hair length is relatively, the same. The haircut's relatively the same. It's just that we have more density at the 24-week mark. And over here, we have the baseline for women. This is a woman who has, maybe this is like a Sinclair 1 or 2, 1 pushing 2. But anyway, we have a baseline here, and then at 12 weeks, the midsection for the woman is filling in, the female subject. At 36 weeks, it looks like it has completely filled in. And then now we have another male subject at baseline versus 36 weeks, where such that at 36 weeks, you can see there's more density, right? It's not even a matter of combing the hair. There's just more density here. So anyway, over here, we have more or less the same thing. More density at 52 weeks than at baseline. I like this picture over here. This is a different subject, as you can see here. Baseline, look at the mid-scalp. Very weak compared to week 52. Look at that. The mid scalp is significantly more dense. It's denser. The whorl, the spiral on the scalp has filled in. And this isn't a combing trick, right? Or combing trick. This is just overall density increase. It's about the same length in terms of haircut style. So yeah, pretty nice. Now we're going to be looking at the before and after comparison display to show the effects of 1% GT20029 twice weekly in men. And look at this. This is amazing. The midsection is full, right? And I think this is a fair picture. Like, even if I do mess with the lighting, like, the density did increase in the midsection considerably, right? You can't really hide this with just, like, combing. Like, this is somewhat of a improvement. So we have to see what that improvement is. Obviously, we need better studies. But we have a study over here. This is actually from Kintor. This is from the European Academy of Dermatology, and this was published between September 25th to 28th of the year 2024. Right. The title of the study is titled, quote, Efficacy and Safety of Topical GT229 Solution in Chinese Adult Males with Androgenetic Alopecia, Results of a Randomized Double-Blind Vehicle-Controlled Multi-Center Phase 2 Study. And essentially, you know, they found some pretty good results. So the primary efficacy endpoint, right? The TAHC. So the target area hair count at week 12 were increased from baseline for all GT229 groups. For the once-day dosing group, so once-a-day dosing group at 0.5% concentration, it was superior to the vehicle, being placebo, with a statistically significant and clinically meaningful difference. So I guess they observed with their eyes, like a general improvement. And this was at the once-a-day application of 0.5% GT229, right? When it came to the 1% twice per week dosing, right? It was superior to the placebo with statistically significant and clinically meaningful difference. So that means there was increase of hair, right? So if we go back to that document I was looking at, maybe this was the guy, one of the subjects from the 1% group. Obviously it was, because it says it over here, right? But if you look at the results, it's pretty meaningful in my opinion. Now, to be fair, over here, the week 12 like picture from the back of the scalp doesn't have the best lighting comparison, where one, you know, the after at week 12, the contrast seems to be, you know, a bit higher. But if anything, I feel like with such a contrast filter on, if it is a filter, you should be able to see more of the scalp. So I'm not sure what they did there. But the midsection, you know, from the global view, seems to have a bit more density for the GT229 male subject that used it at 1% twice weekly. So that's good news, in my opinion. Kintor also sent me another picture. I put this, you know, picture together, but they sent me these two individual photos, right? So this is week 1, day 1 for GT229 at a 1% concentration, used twice weekly, topically. That's week 1, and this is week 12, day 7. So you can see that in this phototrichogram view, there are more hairs per follicle, right? There are some areas, like over here, right? If you're looking at the screen. If we look at the left-hand side for week 1, day 1, there's areas where you can see like little small dots, right? And then in the week 12, day 7, you can see like areas where there's more hair growth. Some of it's vellus hairs. A lot of it is like intermediate and terminal hairs. So that could just be due to chance, right? Some hairs, they go dormant for whatever reason. They were probably going to come back on their own anyway. But we see a lot of hairs being like kind of activated, right? Pushing through the scalp here. So who knows what that's due to? It could be due to GT229 at that 1% concentration, dosed twice weekly. So obviously, GT229 is Kintor's baby. If they get this to the market and if it's actually efficacious, this is groundbreaking. It's like a new use case of a ProTech technology to treat a dermatological condition. And by the way, they're doing it for acne as well. So that's something to note, which is why it's pretty interesting. Let's see. I think I have the acne study out somewhere. If not, I'll just continue. Yeah. But over here you can see the how they set up the trial. Right? Assessed for eligibility, so 225 people, about 45 people were excluded, and then of that 225 people, only 180 kind of made it to the randomized clinical trial, right? So you can see over here how the patients were allocated. 30 were put in the GT229 0.5% once a day dosing group, or I think it's once a day dosing group. QD. Yeah, QD I think is once a day. Maybe somebody can fact check me on that. The GT229 1% QD, so 1% dosing group, so 1% per day. About 29 people were allocated to that group. The vehicle group, so the control group, they didn't receive anything, just a random solution that has nothing active in it. About 31 people were in that group. And then you have the GT229 0.5% twice weekly group. And we had about 29 people in that group. And then we had the GT229 1% twice weekly group. We had 31 people allocated to that group. And then we had the vehicle group again, getting it twice weekly. Vehicle is just placebo. They don't really get anything, right? And it looked like we did have some patient fall off, right, in some of the groups, but generally speaking, most patients, completed the study. And yeah, it looks like a pretty fair clinical trial that they did, and it was pretty effective. Here, and this is like we literally get the statistics over here, by the way, right? The target area hair count, or the total area hair count from baseline at week 6 and 12 from the once a day dosing groups and the twice per week dosing groups. And you can see the general change in the trend, right? Look at this. It looks like the GT229 1% group was just more superior. Whether it was 1% dosed daily or 1% dosed twice weekly, right? It looked like it was generally just more superior. So that's pretty cool. So I think their best bet, they want to do minimal use of the drug. So obviously they want to have a sweet spot where the compliancy would be pretty tolerable, right? You don't have to apply this thing on your scalp every day. If you can get away with doing it twice a week, that's pretty cool. And then they can also limit test that way, right? Maybe you can get away with doing it once a week at 1%, right? Maybe if they're bold enough, they could try going a bit higher. Maybe at 1.5% or at the most 2%. Maybe you can do 2% once a week, right? But in any case, the sort of twice a week use model is very effective, right? Very, very effective. Just in terms of compliancy, by the way, when I say very effective. So I think all in all, Kintor did a really good job, right? And I think, in my opinion, at least I'm hoping, maybe I'm coping too, but I'm hoping GT229 can get to the market at that 1% concentration. I'm hoping that it's efficacious. So when it comes out, it'll be good for people who can't even use finasteride or dutasteride because they might be concerned about side effects. But I'll have to say this to you guys as well. I think the kind of people who are concerned about side effects when it comes to finasteride and dutasteride, they're just not the kind of people to be using any sort of medication, right? look, if we want more effective treatments, it's going to be doing more than just modulating an enzyme in the body, right? Maybe some treatments will modulate other enzymes in the body, but what I'm trying to say is it's going to be doing more than just modulating 5-alpha reductase. If anything, right? It could be doing more to modulate other pathways. Essentially, what I'm trying to say is, if the cure were to come out tomorrow, whatever that cure is might be so crazy in terms of its mechanism of action that it's probably going to put off some people, even if it's proven as safe, right? There's always going to be people that complain about stuff. It's just a general headache. So what I tell people is, practice some introspection, really know yourself. Be honest with yourself when it comes to this, right? What does your hair mean to you? And why are you on treatment? Don't try to be wishy-washy. Don't try to cope. Don't try to say, oh, you're getting side effects. Maybe those quote-unquote side effects and mood issues that you're having isn't due to the drug, but it's due to your condition. Be honest, right? But anyway, I feel like I'm rambling into the void. It is 3:52 a.m., December 28th, 2024. I'm dealing with this weird concussion. God. And my birthday was yesterday on the 27th. But in any case, thank you guys for watching. Thank you for being a member. And yeah, hopefully this thing can go away. It's really hard talking, by the way. It's like, not that I'm tired. It's like, man, this concussion I got was horrible, man. Like, to explain what happened, I essentially was doing Brazilian jiu-jitsu, and I, hit my head hard on the mat. So, but then there was also this weird thing that also happened as well. When I was sleeping, my headboard on my bed broke and kind of fell off, and I woke up with like a bump on the back of my head too. This was like a day after, or so. And the headboard was broken. So maybe I just like jerked and hit my head while I was sleeping. But yeah, crazy shit, It's whatever. I'll be fine, hopefully. But yeah, it's like kind of hard. Like, damn, I really got my head hit on the mat really hard. But in any case, I'll be back for blood, back for vengeance on that piece of shit. But yeah, thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.